Well, we're back now, and I want to go back and just play you something that Jeb Bush said up in New Hampshire at a breakfast up there when he got to the subject of, is he going to be his own man? And here's how he put it.
Everybody knows me as George's boy, Barbara's boy, W's brother. I have some other family members, but if I'm going to go beyond the consideration of running for the highest office in the land, I need to share my heart to show a little bit about my life experience. For those that have family members, I think you can appreciate this. We're not always like our brother or sister or mom and dad. We all have our own unique DNA and our own life experiences.
So he obviously knows that's what he's got to do, but how does he do that, Dave?
I think the ironic thing is that if Jeb Bush was named Jeb Johnson, and a successful two-term governor from Florida, he might be in a better position in the Republican Party right now, other than the money. What the Bush name brings him is the money and the connections. But I think that the W stuff, he can't get around it. It is going to follow him everywhere, just like, frankly, the Clinton, her husband and what he did is going to follow Hillary. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. And I think that's why you're seeing in some of these pollings his favorability, it's under 50% in some of these early primary states. That's a problem for the presumed early frontrunner.
He's also making really no effort, I think, to get away from his brother in particular. You hear him out there using the word evildoers, and we're all, having PTSD flashbacks to 2001. So where is Jeb different from George W. on policy? I don't think we've seen it yet. And you're right, it's a parallel concern for Hillary. Where is she going to be different from where her husband was? She was asked, or her campaign was asked about trade this week. Huge fight between Obama and the Democratic base. She just completely punted, said she's not getting involved.
Or was she going to be different from Barack Obama, not just her husband? I think Jeb Bush has a model for how to do this. When he ran for governor in Florida, everybody said the same thing, you're just another Bush, so they called him Jeb. Got rid of the last name. But he also said, I went to 200 schools. I went and hustled and spent the time in the schools and showed that I cared about the issue. In other words, he didn't talk about how he wasn't George's brother. He showed that he was his own person. Right now he's spending a lot of time raising money, but they hope they'll have this opportunity to do a similar thing. Show who he actually is. Now that's hard to do in today's news cycle, but that's his real challenge, is to actually show who he is, and they hope that the caricature, which has these numbers pretty bad for him right now, people will say, oh, I thought he was something else. Now he's this other thing, and that's potentially intriguing. It's very funny. It sounds very much like what you hear from supporters of Hillary Clinton for their model of introducing a new person that's hard to introduce as new because everybody knows her.
Nancy, do you think this email business is going to prove to be important in this campaign?
I think that Congressional Republicans will make sure to keep it at the forefront throughout her campaign. It's no accident that the House Benghazi Committee said, we want to make sure we hear from you by May 1st, because they knew she was going to roll out her campaign in April. And so they said, let's dog the campaign announcement with more about Benghazi and the emails. And I think that that is going to kind of dribble along, and it's part of the reason that I think they are afraid for her to take questions, because they're worried that all the questions are going to be about emails and not about her vision for the future.
And what about all this foreign money? There's no question that a lot of money poured into the Clinton Foundation, and I guess they've said now, what's the latest now? They've said they're going to limit that from here on in.
They've limited the amount, and she's no longer on the board, so she's pulled away from that a bit. She's separated from it a bit.
But aren't the Republicans going to say, well, but you ought to give it back, what you've already got?
Sure
of course they're going to do that, and they're going to say you should release your server to get the emails off. And that's going to be in the background here, I think, throughout. But the problem for the Republicans is they can't run a general election campaign right now. I went to the Nationals game this week, and the RNC is giving out Defeat Hillary beer koozies. That's all well and good, but we have, as Lindsey Graham said, 35 people running for the Republican presidential nomination. They seem to think the way to do this is to each be more shrill than the other in lambasting Hillary Clinton, to the point where you have Donald Trump retweeting a vulgar tweet about Hillary Clinton. That's not going to, I think, win any of them the nomination. They've got to differentiate themselves other than in how they can be the most anti-Hillary.
But yes, Hillary Clinton does have some issues. She has several albatrosses hanging around her neck, but at the same time, the Republicans are using this against their advantage, for their advantage. But when is it that they're going to start internalizing, saying, we got to point against each other, look at each other and point at each other? Because once they start pointing at one another, the fractures within that party will start showing. And whether it be Jeb, I'm sorry, I'm pointing W.
Well, see, that's the problem.
And there you go.
Whether it be God, I'm doing a D, Jeb or Cruz or whomever else, Huckabee, whoever else. I mean, once they start looking inward, they're going to show all the fractions, and Hillary is going to rise, even with the hearings. There's going to be a back and forth, who's got the momentum, who's got the momentum here, who's got the momentum there. But the issue is, when will the fingers stop pointing at Hillary and go inward into their own party?
One of the interesting things, I mean, we are now in the age of anything goes. There's nothing over the top anymore. And one of the more interesting comments made by Huckabee this week, he told, a radio station out in Iowa, I think it was, that people whose children were thinking about going into the U.S. military, they might be wise to kind of put that off until you have another commander-in-chief, because the current one is not very nice to Christians.
Well, that's going to get him a headline. And
it got him a headline.
It's going to get him a headline, and it looks like he is getting closer to being closer to announcing, to the announcement of actually running. I think we're going to have 2 or 3 more announcements in May. But, again, there's only so much piece of the pie. I mean, with these guys on the Republican side that can throw the red meat. I mean, Ted Cruz is just as good rhetorically. You've got Ben Carson, who is also going to probably looks like he's getting into the ring. And I think eventually what's going to happen is, you're right, the Republicans have been pretty good in New Hampshire. They haven't pointed the arrows at each other yet. That is coming, but I think the ultimate argument in the Republican Party is going to be, who can beat Hillary? That's why you're hearing all the Hillary comments now. It's going to be electability. Who can beat her?
It's true, but because they're all trying to compete to beat her, and there's not so much distinguishing free running room, what they're going to do, and this happened with the Democrats in 2008, is they're going to get into a competition on policy. You see Chris Christie trying to wake everybody up by saying, I've got ideas about entitlements and Social Security, purely because you can only do so much to beat the other guy out in the beating up of Hillary. You just can't be that clever.
One thing, and we haven't talked about him, Marco Rubio. I mean, doesn't he also have a little problem here? And, I asked him about it. If you looked at his profile, it's very similar to that of Barack Obama. And a lot of people thought Barack Obama didn't work out too well. Doesn't he have to prove to his party that he's not Barack Obama?
He's got to prove to his party he's not Barack Obama. Even though he's still someone considered still a novice on the Hill, he's got to show that he has the potential to be an executive. He can sit there at the highest heights and make the decisions. But the problem for him is he's so far right that when it comes, because he's focusing in mainly on things for the primary, but when it comes to the general election, he's got the immigration piece, but all the other stuff, he's very far right, and I don't think he's going to be able to pull the masses of the Republican Party together like he wants to.
And I think that's why Rubio is polling in the high single digits, and each one of them has trouble breaking through a dozen, 15 points here. So normally you would expect some to drop out and others to gain those followers, but somebody like Rubio can raise $40 million and stay in this race as long as he wants, as can all of these other guys. And you can't see how the race consolidates here, and that does leave a huge opening for you, Bob, if you choose to seek the nomination this summer.
John, if you had to, and this would be nothing but a horseback guess, who do you think is going to still be around when we get to the New Hampshire primary, which is, after all, 10 months away?
Bob, I think a lot of them are going to be around because in the old days they'd get windowed because they'd run out of money, or people would think you're kind of off to the side, you're kind of a loser. Now you have the money because of the super PACs that can operate around you, and also being an honest man in a process that is against you is a great way to get on talk radio, to get your own TV shows, and to build your own following for whatever you may want to do in the future. So I think a lot of these candidates, separate and apart from, these are all real candidates. They have held real jobs, governors, senators, they can hold a room. I think you're going to have a lot of people around, which means to win, you might see a pretty small percentage as a winning percentage in the.
Well, we have to end it right there. But once again, I've always said every campaign is different. And certainly this one is going to be different than any that I can remember. So thanks to all of you, and we'll be back. We're going to have a look back at the Oklahoma City bombing and a Face the Nation flashback.